The year is 2025. After a long day of work or school, you decide to sit down and scroll through your phone and watch maybe hours of TikTok, Instagram Reels, or God forbid, YouTube Shorts. Once you're done, you decide to maybe take the time to partake in one of our more culturally significant forms of content and watch a YouTube video. And perhaps once you have completed that, you can go on to your streaming service of choice and pick a TV show or hell, even a movie to watch. While you scroll on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, you will notice that a lot of the shows or movies being offered are very similar to ones you've seen before. And if you look at the new arrivals tab, you'll probably see a lot of very, very familiar faces. Let's face it, we are in what some studies are calling the remake epidemic. A study from 2022 cites that remakes and reboots rule. 64% of original movies and scripted TV shows are made from established IP. Over half of the new content today is content we've already seen just being repackaged and resold to us, whether it be a Disney live-action remake or a reboot of a beloved TV show or a modern spin on a show that was really popular in the 90s or early 2000s. Go to the theaters and you'll find remake, reboot, adaptation, modern spin, modern twist, retelling after retelling after retelling after retelling after reboot after prequel after sequel. Whether or not original media is alive is up to debate, but the reason for reboots is pretty varying, but it boils down to one thing: capitalism, most likely. While a lot of streaming services do have very popular original TV series, drawing on pre-existing IP capitalizes on established and accessible content and is more likely to attract subscriber attention. An analyst at Ampere Analysis called Cyrene Armour said in one of the articles I'm quoting. However, in an era of reboots and remakes, where does blackness sit? Now, when most people think of blackness in a reboot, they think of recasting a already existing white character as a different race, most likely black, which angers a bunch of conservative viewers and leads to a lot of quote-unquote blackwashing allegations or making the content too PC. However, that's not what I will be focusing on. I will be focusing on reboots of black shows, black sitcoms that have been repackaged for the modern day. To answer the question, are we really going forward or are we going backwards? When speaking of a modern reboot of a black show, we cannot rule out Bel-Air, a modern day take on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air set in more modern day America that premiered in 2022 on the network Peacock. It ran for a total of 3 seasons ending in 2024 and did pretty well. Although its first season got a pretty mid response on different websites, its second season had a very high approval rating, reaching even 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and in 2022, Peacock even announced that it was its most streamed original series, reaching 80 million accounts to date. It was nominated at the BET Awards, the Black Reel Awards, where it actually won Outstanding Drama Series, at the NAACP Image Awards, and also at one other award show, the Astra TV Awards. It was actually started by director Morgan Cooper making a fan film for like a modern day reboot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and uploading it to YouTube. It was then seen by Will Smith and they met together. Then the show was kind of bid on and shuffled through Netflix, HBO Max, and Peacock, and it eventually went to Peacock. It was initially signed for just 2 seasons, but it was renewed for a 3rd one. Now, Bel-Air does stand out because it's not a near identical copy of its predecessor. It does take a much heavier tone. It's filmed very differently than the original series, and it's very dramatic. Bel-Air is often cited as a successful example of a black TV reboot. A few other shows that people think did a pretty good job is the Proud Family reboot, which was on Disney Plus. The animation is very nice, and they did do better portrayals of several characters that were kind of iffy in the original series. However, when researching for this final video, I found that a lot of articles were pretty split on whether or not black TV adaptations are doing well or doing poorly. One title reads, "Why reboots of classic black TV shows are succeeding where other nostalgia fare fails," while another reads, "Reboots, live actions, and the decline of black TV." Now, for viewers coming in from watching the black sitcom boom of the 90s, it can definitely seem like we've regressed in terms of black representation. Fox, HBO, BET all had a plethora of black sitcoms, but all of that went on a steep decline by the early 2000s. Nonetheless, there was still a decent amount around. And a lot of shows created by Black creatives usually don't get renewed after a few seasons, and we kind of see them disappear. Several Black shows do get canceled pretty early or are announced and we never see them come to fruition. And in a Nielsen report from 2024, 67% of Black audiences say there's not enough representative content on TV. In an era where networks are taking less and less risks, it's important to note what shows did get made, and that brings me to a show that received incredible Black backlash from its own Black community, and that is the 2024 Good Times animated reboot. When deciding to do this research project, it was the first thing that popped into my mind simply because of how much backlash it got. It's a reboot of the very famous 1970s Black sitcom titled Good Times Back Again, and it premiered in April 12th, 2024. And it was released on Netflix, of all places. I suppose the Good Times trademark or IP somehow ended up in the hands of Netflix. It was announced in September 2020, and it was originally supposed to be Carl Jones as a showrunner, with Norman Lear as an executive producer. However, it got passed around. Rhonda Shepherd replaced Carl Jones, and the release eventually happened in 2024. Now, I don't know if you were on the internet when the trailer came out, but people hated this. If you were on the Black side of any kind of social media platform at this time, but also if you were just reading articles people were putting out about this show, people were not happy, especially Black people. Now, I tried my best to learn about Rhonda Shepherd. She does not have a Wikipedia, but she does have an IMDb, and I was able to find an Ebony magazine interview she did regarding the show. Now, the show was made with the Norman Lear, the original creator of Good Times, as the executive producer, but Seth MacFarlane, who worked on Family Guy, brought the initial concept to him. An interesting thing to note about Rhonda Shepherd is that she is actually Afro-Latina, and she's the only Afro-Latina showrunner in the adult animation space, which is very interesting and even more disappointing because a lot of people did not like this. Now, the show was condemned by people on the internet, reviewers, articles, the NAACP, the Committee to Eliminate Media Offensive to African American People, which I just learned about while researching this, and they were actually formed in 1987, and the December 12th movement. Now, people have come out to say that it isn't as bad as the trailer, but it's also not good at all. People find it overall very lazy and catering to stereotypes. One article reads that it succumbs to the pitfalls of lazy caricatures and offensive stereotypes and chose to promote and champion generational poverty. Now, I do find it unfortunate because the director is an Afro-Latina woman that the show is so bad that it has been compared to by a civil rights activist group to Birth of a Nation. But its showrunner does say in one of the articles I was able to find that I understand if this is jolting, but to just give it a second and you'll understand. However, the drug dealing baby is enough for most people to not want to click on the show. It's also important to note that Stephen Curry was an executive producer on this show. Why? I'm not exactly sure, but he was. However, in an interview with the director, she does say that Norman Lear was very positive and encouraging with her show. She says that it's in a, quote, a different genre that requires it to be loud, offensive, and have hard jokes and be inappropriate. However, in a world where those stereotypes are already strongly associated with African Americans, I feel as though she could have taken a more tactful approach. Now, expanding upon Black animated reboots, I would like to mention Everybody Still Hates Chris, the sequel to Everybody Hates Chris. Although I'm not particularly sure why both of these reboots are animated, I do find it interesting that the genre and media of animation is being molded with these sitcoms in this way. I do find it very interesting. However, it's a reboot on the original show, Everybody Hates Chris, which is a take on comedian and actor Chris Rock's life. It's narrated by Chris Rock, and the first season premiered in 2005. And actually originally aired on UPN from 2005 to 2006, and then on the CW until 2009. It ended in 2009 because Chris Rock himself felt as though the series ending suited his own past, and he felt like it was time to end the story. The show is created by Chris Rock himself and Ailey Leroy, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. and is very popular and very beloved. Despite ending in 2009, I myself did grow up watching the show, despite the fact that I was 4 in 2009. Reruns of Everybody Hates Chris are still played all over TV to this day, and it ran for a total of 4 seasons and a grand total of 88 episodes. Now, Everybody Still Hates Chris was announced in March 2021, with Chris Rock returning as the narrator, so he's obviously given his blessing. Now, it was developed by showrunner Sanjay Shah and premiered on Comedy Central in 2024. The series has a 20-episode release order. It is currently still running, and it's expected to have a Paramount Plus release at a later date. Now, scrolling through Everybody Still Hates Chris reviews, it seems as though people find it promising or pretty good in general. On IMDb, it holds a respectable 7.2 out of 10. Now, it's a little hard to find how many people are actually watching Everybody Still Hates Chris. Everybody Hates Chris proper garnered over 4.8 million viewers for its premiere episode, and 5.6 million of those viewers came back to watch the second episode. However, I was able to find out that the viewership is roughly 25,000 people, and it has gone down 44% between September and October of 2024. So considering that, the numbers seem pretty good. However, outside of just reporting data to you, I've come to give my takeaway. Have we gone back? Have we gone forward? Everybody Still Hates Chris is pretty inoffensive. It doesn't really do much that the original show doesn't do, other than the fact that it's animated and that some of the actors don't reprise their roles, which leaves it pretty stagnant in terms of progression when you compare it to the original show. When looking at our 3 sample shows, we can be seen with, 3 different takes on how Black TV shows are kind of going in the modern day media. Bel-Air is a, quote, fresh, new, darker, grittier, more realistic take on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. However, there are a lot of fresh, new, grittier takes on a lot of different shows. Riverdale did the same thing a few years earlier. All American provides the same thing as well. There are several new, dark, grittier adaptations of already existing media or original series that are on TV today. However, the benefit of shows like these is that they can discuss modern-day serious topics. Similarly to how A Different World can talk about how the LA riots affects all of us, a modern-day Black sitcom can have an episode about Black Lives Matter, or the modern-day implications of code switching or letting your white friends say the N-word, essentially acting out identity politics. In this case, there is racial diversity with the commitment. Although it isn't particularly anything new, it does at least maintain that there is a space like this on TV, and there is at least a few shows like this running, which I wouldn't classify as progress. I would classify it as stagnation. However, the Good Times reboot is a blatant move backwards. It is somehow less progressive than its 1970s counterpart. The show does not attempt to be simulacral or mimetic. It just relies on old tired stereotypes in order to be funny. No one particularly knows who that show is for, perhaps white audiences, which doesn't make sense since it is an adaptation of a beloved Black sitcom, which leaves its identity being rather confused. Those who are more for respectability politics wouldn't like it either, leaving it to feel very out of place in our modern day social context. And finally, returning to Everybody Still Hates Chris, I believe that show would be, again, rather stagnant. Although it continues that a Black sitcom or TV show is still currently airing, it doesn't really change or progress anything that the original show already had. Although it may introduce the show to new audiences, in the age of streaming, older shows are readily available to all people who have a streaming service subscription. In a modern day America where it feels although a lot of our rights and legislations are going backwards, it's important to make sure that our TV and media isn't. When doing a simple Google search for Black shows that got rebooted, we get Bel-Air, The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, She's Gotta Have It, The Wonder Years, Boomerang, and The Game, a total of 6 shows. And although some people are calling for their beloved 90s TV sitcoms to be rebooted, it seems as though TV catered towards the Black viewer has grown rather stagnant. Shows are either getting canceled after the first few seasons the second the networks decide to take a chance with any Black creatives or directors, or we get another spin-off of Blackish. No Blackish shade, but it seems Black TV is in the same conundrum as the rest of the TV sphere. The same very popular, very successful directors continue to create the same very popular works. There are obviously Black audiences willing to put the time, money, and effort into supporting a Black production or TV show. And original shows like Abbott Elementary by Quinta Brunson are doing fantastic. However, my conclusion when it comes to rebooting Blackness, are we going forward or backwards? It seems as though we're forever suspended in time. At best, we stay where we are, or at worst, we go backwards. However, this is just using the few examples that I researched for this final project. It is very possible that there could be a Black reboot or Black adaptation of a show that completely blows out of the water its predecessor and just like is great for everyone. That's all. Thank you for watching. This is Janae C, and this is the end of my final presentation.